fourth Realty Plus co-working conclave, which is presented by 315 Work Avenue. And the first session in that is the future of CRE in work from anywhere era. And I'm sure all of us are witness to that. First up, we have somebody who leads the Workthere platform for Savills at India level as a mentor and a member of the India leadership team, member of the APAC Financial and Professional Services Group, and a 6-member team for diversity and inclusion at Savills India. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about the Executive Director, India Mentor Workthere, Head Commercial Advisory and Transactions, Savills Properties Services India Private Limited, Vishal. Thank you so much, Vishal, for joining us. Well, somebody who's already joined us and has made the talk of this conclave, if I may say so, who's got a robust model that caters to a wide range of audience interested in safe and profit-yielding investments in the real estate sector. We're talking about the founder and CEO of MYRE Capital, Aryaman. Well, next up, somebody who's got more than 16 years and has developed expertise in the CRE advisory to advise on value optimization and maximization strategies. We're talking about the Director and Practice Head, Total Workplace and Workforce Analytics, Strategic Consulting, Cushman and Wakefield, India, Kushalappa, KP. Next up, we're talking about somebody who's a founder of a tech-focused investment banking firm. Somebody who previously worked as a director equities for Duke Equity Partners as a part of the $150 million Duke Special Opportunities Fund. Started his career in 2001, so we're looking at a great experience coming in. The founder and CEO of Simpliwork offices, Kunal, Walia. Next up, a scholar from the Oxford University, workplace management practitioner, helping organizations set up new ways of working via data-driven approaches, a senior executive associate with the Global Workplace Strategy and a Change Management Leaders Advanced Workplace Associates. We're talking about the Senior Associate India and Workplace Productivity Strategy at Advanced Workplace Associates Limited, Parthajeet, Sarma. Thank you so much. And of course, somebody who's with the firm for over 15 years and has been actively involved in providing strategic advisory services to corporate clients on diverse aspects. We're talking about the Head National Operations and Workplace Strategy Consulting India, CBRE, Sumit, Arora. Apologies, I had to cut short everyone's intros, but I know everyone's been waiting and I respect their time. Over to our moderator to take it forth.
Thank you, Bhavna. So guys, I promise I'll keep it very short. And thank you to the panel. Thank you to all of you for being here. Let's bring in some energy into the room by clapping for a person on the panel who's completed 5 years milestone in creating a very, very amazing workplace called Simpliwork. Kunal, congratulations on completing 5 years. Now, we could have done this remotely, but I'm so thankful that we are here enjoying the warmth of this room. And before we dive into the future of real estate in work from anywhere era, I would like to take you guys little in the history and tell you how it all started. So as human beings, what we did was we started to learn how to hunt first. Then we started to learn to hunt in packs. Then we learned to do farming. From there, we dived into the industrial era, and that's where the definition of workplace comes in. That's where the definition of the work hours comes in. So some of us start working from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Some of us work from sunrise to sunset. And as things evolved, we dived into the service era, and we realized that, working 7 days can be tough. So we had 1 day off. And then some smart people said, why have 1 day off? Let's have 2 days off. And then all of a sudden, we were stuck with a date of 24th March 2020. And that was the start of a shutdown, which was followed by partial shutdown, and then concepts which became normal to our life were introduced. And these were work from home, moonlighting, the year of great resignation, and followed by the year that we are in, the year of layoffs or year of rationalization. Now, I just want to turn to my panelists and understand from them. When I started my career 19 years back, I went to a desk which had a computer with a CPU, which had a floppy disk drive. And I don't know how many of us in the room know what a floppy disk drive even means. But from there, we've come to a point where we carry a smartphone in our pockets, and we can work from anywhere. So I want to understand from all of you what work from anywhere means to you and how has it impacted your work sphere. Should we start with you, Aryaman?
Sure. So I think work from home is very interesting as a concept. Being a founder of a startup, I should be supporting it. But, we came up with our own version of it. We started during the pandemic, which was about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. We did try work from home. It didn't work very well. We moved very quickly to this concept called home from work, which effectively, what it meant was that, people are getting a lot of fatigue staying at home. I mean, there were, smaller households, so it was tough to sort of get work done. So what we did is we realized that hotels were super cheap at that point. We were getting 5-star hotels for 1,000 rupees a night. So we went and booked out 5-6 rooms in a hotel. We got the entire team to one of the nice hotels in Bangalore, and we worked together. We sort of lived together, quarantined together, if you must. And I think that really led to a lot of innovative solutions that led to a lot of growth. So whilst, yes, flexibility is important, I think the workspace in itself is also as, well, equally important to, foster innovation and growth. And that's something which theoretically, yes, seems viable, but in practice, it's even more important to ensure that both are sort of maintained, or a balance between both is maintained.
Thank you, Kunal. So you've seen something like co-working, doing very well. And then when COVID hit, it was all-time low. Thereafter, you bounced back like anything.
Yeah. So, good evening and thank you for having me here. I think kind of to go back to the whole start of COVID, right, and the pandemic, and how that disrupted how people normally approach the traditional workspaces, how that's now evolved over a period of time. I think what we've done is a massive shock to the system, and it took just about all of us 2 years to kind of navigate our way through it. The good thing is we are all here. What we are seeing is a lot of strength coming back. As you've seen, corporate leasing probably the highest last year after a gap of 2 years or 3 years, the second highest year ever. A lot of what work from anywhere has evolved to today is distributed offices, closer to location of where the employees are comfortable. Doesn't necessarily have to be a tier 3, tier 4 towns. Companies, at least the large corporates, are cognizant of the fact that there is a certain amount of amenities that need to be provided. There's a certain amount of lifestyle expectations that their executives have, whether these are entry-level executives or mid or senior. They're happy if they are able to operate from locations which allows them more comfort, so closer to family, not necessarily with family. We saw a lot of relocations from, let's say, Hyderabad, Bangalore, even Mumbai, back to places which were, let's say, a Calcutta, which would be 1/5 the living cost, but would have similar amenities to offer, or better in certain cases. And we're seeing that. We are seeing over the last year, large corporates diversifying their office offerings, diversifying and opening more and more locations. Not necessarily a hub and spoke. People still want to be located with their teams. So you don't have distributed teams. You don't have 30 people here, 10 people there, so on and so forth. What we're seeing is more of an emphasis in making sure that they have a more diversified geographic presence. So work from anywhere is essentially work from any of the offices that we actually have. Offices, of course, have evolved, and we'll kind of come back to that. But that's really been how the work from anywhere strategies really evolved to today.
Thank you. Kushalappa, your thoughts?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me here. I think considering the objective of this panel is essentially CRE professionals. So from a work from anywhere perspective, I would put it across that it's about enabling engagement and collaboration from anywhere, not necessarily office. That could also be from a commute perspective. That could be from any third places of work. Could be a cafe or a co-working space, as Kunal rightly put. I think it's about enabling that, and there are and the kind of interesting dynamics that evolve around it. I think it's about trying to get to that and trying to enable that. That's how I would put it across.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how radical I can get, but am I allowed to get radical? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
No, so work from anywhere, not home. Work from anywhere has worked very well for me. If you notice, the card that I handed over to you does not have an address.
Close it.
The card that I handed over to you does not have an address, and I stopped printing the address about 6 years back.
Thankfully, you had a card. There are many of us who don't even have a card.
I just printed my card last week as we started meeting people. And so, in my previous avatar, I used to do a lot of interior fit-out works. And that required me to actually, kind of visit sites and meet clients. But when I kind of transitioned to doing workplace strategy, I realized that all you need is actually a good Wi-Fi, which you're mentioning, it's a problem, and an airport. That's all you need. And I was surprised that, when I got associated with AWA about 5 years back, and here was a company which was doing this for the last 30 years, and people are actually working remotely. But here's something I'd like to actually take inspiration from what Kunal said and the offices that he's built. I think what is the importance of the physical space, the office, should not be taken lightly, in the sense like, I think, even if you work remotely, I think the sense of community building which you need to do is very, very important. Without that, work from anywhere does not work for me. If I get the sense that I belong somewhere, that I relate to something, if I'm part of something, work from anywhere works for me very well. And it's worked very well for me that way.
Awesome. Sumit.
Last but not the least, I'll add a little lighter note perspective to it. We are on a Friday evening. Honestly, if there is something in India, I think, which is being spoken about as much as what cricket and stock markets are for us, it is work from anywhere. Pretty much everybody has an opinion, everybody has a view, everybody has a context. And believe me, the exact same scenario is applicable for all organizations, irrespective of which sector. It's so volatile that the kind of views which emerged around this subject a year and a half back to about 9 months back to 6 months back to 3 months back have constantly evolved. So in a gist, because we keep talking to a lot of corporate office occupiers, for us, I think the main crux behind this entire concept is more to do with getting multi-generation workforces to come together and create an experience which is apt for all of them, number one. Secondly, it's about culture and the transformation. Thirdly, it's about behaviors. Keeping aside all the conversations around hub and spoke offices and the fact that you could be remote and work from home, work from anywhere, I think the focus has really shifted towards enabling the environment. And things which are not being understood as much today are these three things which I spoke about. Because I don't think we are equipped enough to be able to influence culture, we are being able to influence behaviors overnight. These are trends which have formed over years. So personally for me, I think it's something which is absolutely unscratched right now. I wouldn't be surprised if another year from now, the kind of remote working / hybrid scenario which we see versus what we've seen last year completely flips with the fundamentals remaining intact. So it's a big disruptor and huge changes in employee behavior, leader behavior. We've seen it all, but I still believe that it's just the start.
Thank you, Sumit. Taking a cue from what you said, enablers, it's interesting to note that Google, or rather Internet, turned 40-year-old on 1st of Jan this year. Google turns 25-year-old on 4th of September this year. Wi-Fi, we all cannot live without Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi actually was introduced commercially in 1997, and it took about 8 years to have it, in our bloodstreams. It got popular by 2005, right? But it just took one virus to ensure that we take a leap of faith and jump into Zoom calls and have technology move to another level. Now, there are three entities who actually matter in this whole discussion. The employees, the employer or occupier, the developer or the owner of this office space. And at the center of what, all these three entities sits an individual CRE professional. What I would like to know from the panel here is what role does CRE professionals play in an organization's journey between their mission, vision, and annual targets? And what are the evolving matrices that define success of RE strategies in this era of work from anywhere? And maybe we can start with Sumit, you first.
Sure. Vishal, I think at the crux of this entire discussion is we need to take a step back and also start to see what has changed in terms of the roles which CRE teams play in organizations. Over the last 2.5, 3 years, the kind of relationships which the CREs now maintain with business and HR in terms of influencing the larger vision strategy is completely changed. It's no longer just a real estate decision being taken by a set of people who are focused more on getting the right space. It is a huge element of HR, a huge element of business which is starting to contribute. And because of that, what we are at least seeing is that in some of the more evolved and even emerging setups, there is a clear difference in the KPIs. KPIs, of course, when I say KPIs, I'm talking not so much so in terms of KPIs only from a CRE professional standpoint, but how do you measure whether you've created a successful workplace environment? Have you done that or not, right? 3-4 years back, the context was very simple. The densities you are at, the square foot per person ratios you're at, the square foot per seat ratios you're at, how much OPEX and capital cost saving did you land up achieving when you did the fit out of a particular space? Today, those same professionals are taking a tone which is more focused towards seeing CSAT scores, seeing engagement scores, seeing how can you actually measure whether my space allows employees and staff and leaders to get the right quantum of collaboration time. Are my meeting rooms being utilized to an extent where I've right-sized them? What is the hospitality quotient in my space and how can I measure the level of employee satisfaction? And this is a reality. I mean, this is happening in not just the more evolved organizations, it's even happening in some of the more emerging setups which we've seen. So we really need to keep in mind that, the kind of flip over in the metrics which has taken place is definitely ingrained. It's starting to get measured. And that's causing a little bit of a disruption in this entire space because a lot of traditional leaders who've been operating in the CRE metrics for a long, long time are not used to working that way. So it's really going to take time, and I think it's a transformation, but it's definitely something which is starting out.
Thanks, Sumit. Kunal, you want to get in here? Because any RFP that comes in also comes in with a KPI now. And you must have gone through many RFPs.
Yeah.
So
No, I think, I think now the RFP is being designed with a larger stakeholder base, even from the IPC end. It was always unfortunate when we started Simpliwork. We used to look at RFPs, and they used to be largely driven by the transactions team with very few inputs from the Occupy strategy side. And what we're seeing, and I'm very happy with that, is a lot more inputs coming in from consulting, from Occupy strategy, from HR. And just adding on, I 100% agree with what Sumit's saying, right? And a consequence of what he said is also you have a lot of traditional CRE professionals who did not realize that their job is a lot bigger than just interacting with the IPC folks and the brokers. And we started out, we used to typically go to an office. There used to be some friends from Savills or somebody from CBRE was kind enough for an introduction. And there used to be a sea of people waiting to meet the RE head. And that's the couple of them which we knew, and we talked to them and said, what's your day look like? And it's pretty much one meeting after the other, and all of them were transaction guys meeting them. There would be an odd architecture firm, a design firm, an odd vendor pitching for certain businesses, etc. But it's extremely transactional. Today, when we talk about it, the great thing that's happened is the conversations are starting 6-9 months before any kind of decision-making is coming on stream, right? They are more curious. They want more inputs. They reach out, even when they're not in the transaction mode, to kind of try and figure out, hey, look, there is a certain competitor or a certain peer set that you guys have worked with. What has been your experience? What have you guys done differently with them? How did they kind of evolve their strategy? 3 years, 4 years back, a large organization would say, we need space for 1,800 people, like Sumit said, put in not even an Excel sheet, right? Just a calculator, 80 square feet per person into 1,800, 1.45 million square feet. Let's figure out 1.5 million square feet, and we only work with DLF, or we only work with KRC, so that's it. Today, that thing has shifted tremendously. First is everybody down the line, everybody, down to the last manager, has to sign off on putting those people onto the seat. If you're asking for 40 seats, you have to underwrite those 40 seats. I don't care how large an organization you are. A lot of that is obviously what's come out in the news right now over the last 2-3 months, like you said. A lot of the layoffs happening at this point of time. Obviously, on the CRE side, we've been seeing that and indications of that over the last 3 quarters because the decision-making processes have become longer. They're asking for more accountability from business. They're asking for more inputs from HR. They're asking, and more importantly, the collaborative approach of the final decision is no longer with the CRE professional. The CRE professional is understanding that his job is to represent the organization to get them what they want, which means this is what my HR's ask is, this is what my business leader ask is. My job now is to make sure that all of these stakeholders benefit by using me as a conduit. So we are seeing significant amount of traction, although that leads to larger sales cycle, but a much more happier product. For one of the very large organizations, one of the top 500 firms in the world, they had a small presence in Calcutta. We entered, they wanted to expand with us. We gave them an offering. It took us about 6-7 months to figure out. It was really frustrating because we were losing money the longer we were talking with these guys. But we wanted to make sure that we are able to kind of come to consensus.
You were lucky 6 to 7 months only.
So luck has little to do with it, more to do with the fact that, look, the space is going, right? So that FOMO always works almost everywhere. But the result of that was when the new office, which we opened for them, which is in the same complex as the previous office, their problem was they had 20% people reporting into work. When the new office opened, we had 82% occupancy first day. It's been month 4, we're still at 75, 76 in holding. And we actually got a lot of feedback. The CRE head was very happy. He spoke to me, gave me a nice recommendation, very nice of him. And he said, look, I think this is the result of when we pause and think through things versus earlier, the business heads used to come in and said, I need 400 seats tomorrow. So today, the business leaders are also more aware that this is a process that involves a lot of give and take, a lot of thought process. And that evolution means the CRE professional is really getting into the right place, right? So you typically look at CXOs. I come from the finance world. For me, the CXO used to be CIO, CTO, COO, and CEO. I think now, hopefully in the next 2 years, you're going to see real estate professionals or CRE professionals within large organizations get to that level as well, where along with the CHRO, there is a central real estate officer who's sitting down and saying, look, it's not just about arranging transport or security services, it's also making sure that the employees are happy, and I have to be a part owner of that. It can't be just an HR job. So employee productivity, employee happiness is no longer about just making sure that you have the right space for Rangolis. But you also need to make sure that different people have different styles of working, different teams have different styles of working, that you're able to cater to everybody. It's no longer about, look, we use dual screens, so we need a 5x2 setup. So a lot of that evolution, and the guys I see the happiest are the design firms, right? Because finally somebody's actually listening to them. Because earlier, I remember, even 3 years back, we used to pitch something, and I used to put in my efforts as well and said, look, let's kind of try and evolve the design. And the answer or the feedback from at least the large corporates that we work with was, look, this is already set in New York. You don't need to kind of reinvent the wheel here. So the fact that we are getting to reinvent the wheel is very exciting.
I can tell you the global handbooks are going for a change. Yeah. So great insights. Kushalappa, you have something to add to it.
Yeah, definitely. I think we can very well summarize this as, there's a quote which says, illiterates of the 21st century are those who can't read and write, but those who can't learn, unlearn, and relearn. And I think the CRE professionals are at that stage where they need to go beyond just managing facilities. And I would say from being facilitators, I think as Kunal mentioned, the C-suite, they are more going into the role of being owners. So several of our clients who we service, the talk has gone beyond just workplace strategy and actually looking to see how they can manage talent. And that's where, apart from workplace, we also provide workforce analytics in terms of understanding what the talent requires. And that's a question coming from the CREs, which means that they are going through that process of trying to really understand what is the talent requiring, going beyond just the HR professionals for that matter. So I think one key point that I would also want to highlight over here is they're looking at how do they enable collaboration, because when you look at engagement and collaboration, engagement is about providing the services and the amenities, but collaboration is actually how to make that happen, which means how do they manage the change in work styles that is happening. So I think that's a key element that CREs are looking at, and that's where we are also coming in and providing that aspect of how do they enable the talent to transition. I think that's one point I want to make.
That's why I said CREs are playing a role between the mission, vision, and the annual targets of the firms. So, any thoughts from you on that?
I think all the good words have been said. I'll play your role. I was trying to structure my thoughts around this, and very interesting points actually. Like Kunal said, I think CRE professionals have a voice on the table, which is good news. You always learn some new terms, and Sumit spoke about the, what quotient did you speak of? The hospitality quotient. And I was just thinking about what you said in the beginning, that you spoke about the industrial era, and then you spoke about the service era, which came after that. And I was just thinking about our clients that we've worked with over the last 3 years especially, and what we've seen is that, and if I actually think about it, I think if you take a step back and think about management science itself, management science was always written, be it Kotler or anybody, we became MBAs by reading it from the employer's perspective, from the business owner's perspective. The thing about customer centricity was written in the 60s, but we never saw it till the 90s. It was only in the 90s that we actually saw that, oh, we have a choice. We have a choice. And then the moment that happened, the whole game changed, right? The way products are sold and the services are sold changed. So today when you buy an iPhone, you're buying 90% into a story that you relate to and 10% into product. And that same thing, I think, is actually beginning to happen in organizations today, where employees are saying and thinking, that we have a choice now. Okay? They realize that we have a choice. And I think that's a very bitter pill that management has had to swallow. And I think this changes the game for CRE professionals completely. And I think that's why these terms like, hospitality quotient, the voice on the table is kind of coming up now. And it's going to be, well, it's going to be a transition. It's not going to be easy.
Yeah, I can see that, because we have a choice has taken us from a year of great resignation to a year of recalibration, right? So with that, Aryaman, what are your thoughts?
Sure. So I'll just add a anecdote from experience. So at the start of the pandemic, so we have a lot of tenants in our portfolio. A lot of them are MNCs. The first reaction was panic, of course. They reached out to us saying, lockdown, we need to leave these properties and things like that. 2 weeks later, they came to a point of equivalent to, I guess, depression or acceptance that this is the new reality. We have to live in it. 2 weeks after that, they came to a point of realization that, maybe work from home isn't permanent. Maybe it's not, maybe a hybrid situation will be longer term. And still they were trying to sort of, wrap things up. A month after that, they realized that they've invested enough capital. So, there was a financial investment in it. They had their servers sitting in these properties. So, you can't take the servers home. So, how is this going to end? So, there was no real planning in this whole tsunami of emotions that I would say these MNCs went through. And I think that's where the CRE, individuals' responsibility comes in, to tell them that, this is really how things are going to pan out for you, to educate them so that these MNCs are able to take decisions. One very interesting conversation I had with one of our tenants. So they're a US-based MNC. They were very gung-ho on work from home. We kept telling them that, India as a country has a very young population. More than 50% of our workforce is probably below 27. So what happens in these kinds of countries is that work from home can't work because you have processes to build. You still have innovation to do. It's not like a developed Western nation where everything is streamlined, systemized. and you can sort of go back home and things will operate the same. It doesn't work like that in all parts of the world. So, giving these kinds of insights, I think, is a new responsibility and the role of a CRE professional, as opposed to, I think, which was heavily transaction-oriented, pre the pandemic. So this is, I think, something that, we've really picked up from inexperience and try to build into our processes as well.
So after COVID, thanks for that. After COVID, we all got into revenge traveling, and I also had a sheer pleasure of doing that. So I did manage to travel to Delhi office, Bangalore office, London office, and New York office. Also, many, when you pick up any magazine, any newspaper, you'll see a lot of surveys coming around, right? So anyone and everyone is doing surveys on what the employees want, and I had the pleasure of seeing it myself unfolding in offices that I visited, client offices, our own offices, and what I saw and what relates very well with the surveys is that 12 to 20% people don't want to come back to office. They are very, very happy with work from anywhere, to the extent that they've become digital nomads. They love working, they love traveling, and they also want me time. So all of a sudden you see someone traveling to Goa, Istanbul, London, Rajasthan, and working from there. And Harvard did a study which says that if an organization has to maintain its fabric of culture, if the employees have to, so to say, contribute in the right way, then at least 40% they need to be in a collaborative environment in the office, right? And it ties in with other surveys which toggle between 40 to 70%. Now, at the center of it is office. And my belief is that if anyone makes a building, it survives for minimum 30 years. And if it is made very well, then maybe 300 years, right? So space matters. And in the era of work from anywhere, what we have is people who are willing to come to office and people who are not willing to come to office. That means hybrid work is here to stay. And that brings me to the next question of what do we do? How do we balance properties in under three stages, under three categories? The first one being, we've seen properties at, fantastic locations, right? These are old buildings at strategic locations. We've seen new buildings coming up near infrastructure. Government has put in so much of impetus on infrastructure. We have coastal road, we have bridges, metros coming in. We have new buildings coming in there. And then we have campuses and buildings with big firms who are recalibrating themselves. What do we do? How do we strike a balance between the space and what the employees want? Kunal, you want to start?
I must kind of point out just on a lighter vein that this is a very Mumbai question, right? The strategic location aspect. It's a very Mumbai thing. This is because all you're referring to is South Mumbai, right? There is no IT firm, I know, and IT is still, 67% of all leasing in this country, right? Which wants to be in South Mumbai, with the exception of a licensing office. Same is the case with Connaught Place in Delhi, correct me if I'm wrong. When you talk about Hyderabad, you are looking at 90% of the leasing value being two micro markets, which didn't exist as locations, as recently as 25 years back. Same as the case with Calcutta, same as the case with, Cyber City. In Gurgaon, arguably the largest micro market. You look at OMR in Chennai, you look at Bangalore, Wakefield, you look at now the Bellary Road or the Airport Road. And so it's a very Mumbai question, right? But having said that, you have large corporates which have traditionally built their offices from a headquarters perspective, saying these are co-locations, who over the last 2 years were disrupted from various quarters, right? One was obviously the pandemic, which is the largest. The second was pandemic means the CX was now sitting at home and trying to figure out how do I rationalize. And they looked at their real estate and said, why am I paying 400 rupees per square foot for all of these guys? I understand the requirement that a certain amount of people need proximity to CBD, and that office is fine. So why not right size this, right? So reduce the footprint from a large, expensive location to the extent of 60, 70%, free up your balance sheet, take remote locations or take outside cities, right? Because that's the other problem, that you had geographical risk which kept piling on in India. Ever since the previous financial crisis of 2008, real estate never really saw a slowdown in this country till about 2017-18, and then the pandemic being the large one. As a result of that, companies had ad hoc growths, whether it's Bangalore, whether it's Hyderabad. You look at broken down urban infrastructure in this country, a large part of the reason is also the growth being absolutely ad hoc. So you had an employee base which went from 1,000 ODCs, 1,000 employee ODCs going up to 40,000 without a check. Because that was easy, that's where the CRE head is, that's where your CXO is, so on and so forth. And the pandemic allowed them to relook at that and said, let's geographically diversify the risk, let's get something going in Gurgaon, let's put something in Chennai, let's put something in Pune, so that if there is a business continuity risk, we are able to kind of manage that really well. That trend is obviously accelerated. So we had the opportunity, and we continue to actively work on these opportunities where when firms are looking to right-size their portfolio, we are able to kind of step in, free up their balance sheet, which essentially means we look at leasing as a financial asset. People look at only the property or the hard asset. We look at the leasing rights and the ability to pay a constant currency terms for a predictable 15 years as an asset. We look at that as an asset. We try and financialize it by saying, look, you got 7 years left in your lease, not an issue. You got a certain amount of value of the fit-outs, so to say, or a certain amount of asset based on your balance sheet. We're going to pick that out. We're going to pay you up front, and you can pay us over the period of 7 years or 8 years and so on and so forth. That trend of financialization of the real estate lease or commercial lease, I think is going to be the biggest thing over the next 10, 15 years. It's not going to happen in a year or two, which is why when we talk about it, changes take time, trends take time, but that's definitely something where not only have we already done it, we are also probably the only guys who are talking about literally millions of square feet under the same portfolios. You talk to every large corporate today, everybody's looking at right sizing. That really comes in quite handy.
Thank you, Kunal. In fact, this is a Mumbai-based question. Largely, I must say that, because Mumbai is also facing an issue where, whichever building has got single ownership, it has been taken over by Blackstones and Brookfields of the world. And there is a large set of, spaces which are absolutely phenomenal, sitting at the right place, but have multiple owners. So, since you look at fractional ownership, is there any scope? Now, before I come to you, I'll quote something which I just read from Financial Times. It says that one of the entities in Manhattan, heart of New York, tied up with the owners of World Trade Center. And what they've done is they have collaborated and taken up financial buildings, 33-storied building, which is not of use thanks to remote working. Employees don't want to come back. So they bought over the building and they have turned it into a residential condo zone, right? So is something like that possible in a place like Nariman Point, which is the mother of, corporate India, if I may say so, in the financial center of India? Aryaman?
Sure. So I think it's an interesting question. The problem starts because of fractional ownership, but I also think the solution is fractional ownership. So I'll break that into two parts. What happens, or what has happened in India in the past, is that buildings have been broken down and sold in small fragments to investors directly by the developer without a managing intermediary. What happens is it's almost like investing in a mutual fund, and then the fund manager leaves. So who makes the decisions? Who takes care of the fund? Who takes care of the building? When you have so many different stakeholders, and each one has their own perspective, each one in their own right, of course, but it's never really going to work out. So what happens is platforms like us, we are sort of enabling that kind of investments of these investors into smaller parts of these buildings, but we keep an overarching framework to ensure that there is someone who is managing the entity. There's sort of rules to the game, if you must. And we are trying to formalize a structure to it as opposed to let it run ad hoc. So this gives the whole, investing framework longevity. It gives it a sustainable framework or ecosystem to operate under. Tomorrow, let's assume that the building becomes derelict. There's a decision maker who can sort of decide, let's invest this much capex into, let's say, redoing the facade of the building. So there's someone who can take that decision, appoint the relevant people, and get the work done. And I think that's very important. So I think that's what was lacking in the past, and platforms such as ourselves are trying to change that without sort of putting the smaller investors at any additional loss or negative position. So I think it's a very interesting space. And redevelopment is something that, we as a platform also are looking up and taking up.
Thank you. In the interest of time, I'll move to the last question for this panel, and that is, we've seen ourselves moving from Wi-Fi to Internet of Things, and very quickly we've jumped into 5G. We're talking about meta universe, blockchain, and one-check solutions, shared spaces. In this era, should the CRE professional feel threatened? And if not, what role can they play to disrupt the RE? Some part of it has been covered in the second question of mine, so feel free to answer.
Yeah, I mean, those who adapt does not need to feel threatened. But to your question about the fact that we are moving to the metaverse and all of that, I think there was a report that I read, and I think it was also quoted by CBRE and others, that 75% of people in workplaces will be millennials and Gen Z in 2025. That has been questioned.
In India is 29 years as
Sorry?
opposed to 38 in Japan. So 29-year-olds.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit questionable, but even if you go by that, it actually means that your company policies, everything in your office is going to be determined by the way they behave and what they expect at the workplace. This is a generation which wants everything at the flick of their finger, be it food or be it transport. And with the digitization of work and the fact that we are actually moving to the metaverse very, very quickly, they'll expect the same from the physical workplace as well. So when you transverse, or when you actually, sorry, that word got stuck in my head. So when you go through your workplace experience in the physical workplace, they'll expect the same kind of efficiency and ease of work at the workplace. And I think that actually opens up an opportunity for CRE professionals, that they need to move, like Sumit spoke about earlier, the kind of the quotient on the hospitality quotient has to go up. They have to deliver a full workplace experience journey. I think that's an opportunity there. And I think this gives rise to the emergence of discipline which can be called workplace management, and I think we have to move out of the siloed kind of disciplines of facilities management and HR management and IT management, and look at a holistic discipline of workplace management. I think that's the opportunity out there, and I think CRE professionals are best suited to fill in that opportunity.
Kushalappa, any words from you?
Yeah, sure. Just to add on to what Partha mentioned, I think CREs are actually getting more empowered. That's how I would put it across. As he mentioned, in every challenge, there's an opportunity. So what we are also helping our clients do is give them data, because data breaks perceptions, because quite a few decisions are taken based on perceptions. And that's where data in terms of productivity of talent, why working in collaboration is better than individual, meritocracy. I think that's one aspect. The second aspect I just want to quickly highlight is change management. We are enabling them to have an effective communication going out to the employees in order to enable them to understand the aspects of coming in and working together, rather than, technology has actually enabled individual-centric performance. And even our social fabric, for that matter, even if you look at our education infrastructure, for that matter, it enables individual meritocracy. And that legacy, as Sumit also mentioned, there's a legacy element which also needs to be broken. And that's essentially can take place through continuous positive communication, through change. And that's essentially what I would say is actually empowering them more.
I'll add one last point to this. I already see that screen, it's a big red out there. So I think despite whatever has happened in the world, whether it's last 2 years or last 20 years, and including in real estate, we need to keep in mind that as basic an element as farming still exists as the most prominent activity which is done in our country and world over. This is an established fact. AI, ChatGPT, XYZ, they will all find a place for themselves, but basic elements, and why I quoted farming was very important, because it is the grassroots and fundamental of how a lot of businesses operate, how a lot of population startups operate. I think it's a very similar case. We are simply saying that the roles are definitely going to evolve. It's irreplaceable as a function. And secondly, I think my I mean, our personal prediction, I'm not talking on behalf of CBRE, but the way I look at it is, give it 5-7 years, I think you will see CRE roles getting recoined as more experience-based teams rather than real estate teams, because I think that is really where this market is headed. And that integration of that experience element as part of real estate strategies is what the standout instances are going to seem like. That's just, the way at least I would say it.
Thank you, Sumit, and I totally agree with your comment. I'll conclude by saying that we live in interesting times. We can choose what to see. Hybrid is here to stay, and CRE professionals are here to gain. We need to open our eyes and see what we want to see. So one side, when you hear that I have the stats which says that between 1st Jan 2022 till today, there have been about 2,007 layoffs in the tech companies, and about 379,000 employees have got affected, right? Which means about 660 employees have got laid off per day. So on one side, you have this, tabloids and economists in US and Europe stating that winter is coming. On the other side, you have the government maintaining a neutral stance on geopolitical issues, toiling hard to sign up, MOUs in Davos, and firms like Nestle posting 66% profit, which they have seen for the first time in the last decade for Q4, and Tata Group posting 20% growth, historic high. They haven't seen this kind of growth in the, ever since they started. So we have these, bright spots in front of us. As the panel said, that CREs have a stronger role to play. We can work from anywhere, but to be in the fabric, to ensure the vision of the firm continues to be 40 to 70% time we need to spend in offices. And with that, I conclude. And Bhavna, you can take over. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. Can I get audio on my mic? Thank you. Thank you so much, Vishal, on a very well-rounded conversation, and you covered a lot of great aspects. So thank you on that, and I'm sure the panel would resound with the excellent curation. Could I now have the editor, Realty Plus, Sapna Srivastava, to kindly join us? Let's give her a big, big round of applause as we welcome her to help us in the felicitation. Firstly, we request Vishal to please step forward, and thank you for your valuable time. Come on, ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause. Aryaman, thank you once again for contributing to this wonderful panel. Let's give him a big round of applause, Aryaman. Thank you so much, Kushalappa, KP. Thank you for your valuable time, sir. Come on, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Kunal, Walia. Thank you for joining us. Right in the center, yes, they need the center shot. Thank you, Parthajeet, Sarma. Thank you for joining us on this great panel. Thank you, Sumit, Arora. Thank you for giving us your valuable time and joining us on this panel. And with that, if I may request the entire panel, along with Sapna, to please step forward for a group photograph. And when you have such great group of leaders, I think we can just resound with a big round of applause for all of them. Thank you.